Hey guys, welcome back to Ride Review. My name is Mitch, and today we're over here at Power on E-Bikes in Houston, Texas, and we're checking out the OKAI FlexMov EBF10. Now it's a bit of a mouthful, so I'm probably just gonna call it the FlexMov from here out throughout the rest of the video, but just so you know, like, this is the bike that we're talking about, so let's get into it. Now the first thing you'll notice is it is a very small, very compact folding e-bike. We do have telescoping stems here, and obviously we got some length here we can put on our seat post, so this is going to fit quite a range of riders. Now they see on their website, I think it's like 4'11" to 6 foot something or other. I think that's probably doable in that sense. However, kind of like best fit, best geometry, probably looking at somewhere between 5'2" to 6 foot flat, in my opinion. You could probably get away with it, but again, just kind of how the bike's designed, how it feels to ride, that would be my, air quotes, expert opinion as far as who should fit on this bike. If you're shorter, taller, and you fit on this bike and you love it, leave me a comment down below. Tell me I'm just a silly goose, right? You just put silly goose on the bottom, I'll know exactly what you're talking about. Now, as you see it here, we do have the front basket and this larger cargo basket here in the rear. Those do not come standard on the bike at that $849 price point. Now, these specific rack and basket, they're not on the website. So based on what you can get for the Ranger, I'm thinking these are gonna be probably $49.99 and then $59.99. So 50 and 60 bucks, extra 110 bucks, get you all this carrying capacity up here in the front, all here in the rear. Again, that's just my estimate based on what they currently have, because they don't have these ones specifically labeled on the website just yet. This is a pretty new bike, so that does make sense. So price point, we talked about price point. Obviously this thing folds, and we'll show you what it looks like folded up here in just a second, but let's talk about some of the specs on this folding bike. Here in the rear, we've got a 48 volt, 350 watt motor. Now this thing peaks at about 672 watts, which is pretty decent for a 350 watt motor. Again, we've got a 48 volt system, so we're kind of able to pull a little bit more out of that 350. It's not a powerhouse, right? It's not something where you're gonna be flying around. Top speed is 20 miles per hour here, so nothing too crazy as far as speed or anything like that goes. The battery we have here is gonna be in the down tube. Now, with a lot of down tube batteries, I think electric is a good example and probably the one that most people know. Usually there's a keyhole down here where you put your key in, and sometimes you put the key in and you gotta leave the key down there, which I'm not a huge fan of. This one, when you open it up, and again, we'll walk through that when we fold it up, there is actually a key or a cylinder here on the battery, so you actually put the key into that and pull it out, and you don't need the key to operate it, which in my opinion is pretty nice. Again, a lot of the bikes that are kind of like this, usually you got a key, you put it in the bottom, so I think they redesigned that, thought about that in a pretty nice way. Now this is a Bafang battery, which is interesting. We don't see a whole lot of those in my, just in my experience. I haven't seen a whole lot of those. I know they make batteries, and we do have that here. Bafang's a pretty big company, so I imagine they're using some pretty decent cells in there. The battery here is a 10.4 amp hour, 499.2 watt hour, I believe, just doing some quick math in my head. So OKAI says this has got a range of like 59.2 miles or something like that. I don't think you're gonna be getting that on this bike. It is cadence, it's not torque, so it's not necessarily gonna be super efficient, or it's not gonna be as efficient as a torque sensor in using that power. So realistic range is really probably closer to 25 to 35 miles with a 10.4 amp hour battery, and that's sort of a realistic ride with, a little bit of pedal assist, a little bit of throttling. I think they say just throttling is about 25 miles, something like that. But yeah, I think realistic range, 30 is probably a decent average if you're kind of doing a mix of pedal assist and throttle and you're just not going crazy with it. So a little overzealous on the battery specs in my opinion, but if it's very specific, so I don't know if they actually had somebody go out there and do it. If they did, that would be awesome. I'd love to see some evidence of that. How tall was the person, how much did they weigh, what was the factors around it, inclement weather, incline, terrain, things like that all affect how far you get on a battery. So if they were to pull it off, that's pretty awesome, and maybe there's a little bit more efficiency here than I'm giving them credit for off the bat. We're not going to be doing a full range test to put that, to the test. However, just based on my experience, looking at the math on it, it doesn't quite make sense that we'd be able to get 60 miles out of there. But again, you know, 30, 35, kind of on the high end, in my opinion, is probably more realistic on a bike like this. So that's the motor, that's the battery. Now the next thing that I would probably talk about, and again, we're gonna get to the folding here in just a second, I would say is the brakes. Now, in my opinion, this is probably one of two misses for me, because we have mechanical brakes. It's 2024. We just reviewed the Rad Runner Plus. That was a bike that came out in 2020, still rocking mechanical brakes. A lot of the stuff on the Rad Runner Plus was, you know, kind of ahead of its time based on, you know, the current technology and what most people were doing. But it's 2024. We probably should see some hydraulic brakes here. Now again, you're not going super fast. It's only got a top speed of 20 miles per hour. So the mechanical brakes work fine. They're not a you know, a safety hazard, but I would prefer to see hydraulic brakes on here. That would be something I think that would be a pretty good upgrade. And even if I'm paying an extra $100 to get, you know, hydraulic brakes, I would do that, right? It's probably gonna cost you 120 if you do it yourself, you know, maybe closer to 200 if you wanna, you know, take it to a shop like Power and E-Bikes and have them do it for you. But in my opinion, it'd be a good upgrade. If you already got this bike and you're like, man, I feel like the brakes could be upgraded, they can, right? We go for hydraulic brakes. So I'd pay an extra $100 to see hydraulic brakes on here right out the gate. I think that would be pretty cool. The only other miss for me on this bike, and again, there's really not a whole lot of misses here, is the fact that we don't have locking grips. So these grips, they're rubber and you can move them. Like I'm putting a pretty decent amount of force, but if you're riding it, especially if you're in a hot place like Texas, now it's like, you know, it's the evening, so it's not hot. It actually feels kind of nice out here. But if you are in, you know, daytime riding and it is a little bit hotter, having something that's got a locking mechanism here to keep these from twisting, I think makes a lot of sense, because this is the main point of contact on the bike. So again, misses, mechanical brakes instead of hydraulic, and locking grips here. Other than that, from a safety perspective, we do have most of the other stuff that we'd want to see. Now at this price point, it would be cool to see integrated headlight, integrated rear light, and we don't have that here. We do have this reflector here in the back, but as you may have noticed already, there is no front light on this particular bike. So this is not something you're gonna wanna ride around at night. We don't have sidewall reflective stripes. We don't have a front headlight. We don't have a rear headlight. So again, thinking about the price point does make a lot of sense here. But for this form factor, some of the other things that I like about the bike, I'd pay an extra 150 bucks or so. Putting this, you know, if we put this at like $9.99 and it comes with hydraulic brakes and it comes with integrated lights, I think this is, you know, pretty much a home run as far as a nice, affordable, you know, versatile e-bike. Up here in the front, we've got our suspension. Not a whole lot of travel. If I had to guess, and I don't have, you know, a measurement tool with me, this is probably about 60 millimeters of travel, maybe 50. I don't believe they have that listed on their website, so I'm just kind of going off of, you know, looks. And we don't have any adjustments, so there's no preload, no lockout adjustment or anything like that here. So these are just kind of standard stock forks. No adjustments, you know, they are what they are, and, you know, you get what you get. Again, thinking about the price point, 849 bucks, I think that that makes a lot of sense here. But again, I think I would rather pay an extra, you know, 150 bucks to get maybe a little bit more decent suspension. I don't think it's the end of the world as far as the suspension goes, but you know, some of the stuff we talked about, like hydraulic brakes and the integrated lights, that would make a lot of sense, I think. We do have these metal fenders here. Now, as you know, if you guys have seen in my videos, not a huge fan of the all metal fenders. There are a lot of brands coming out with these like very nice, very durable, thick, sturdy plastic fenders. And I think there's a lot of advantages there. Now, the advantage with metal fenders is they're more stable, right? They're a little bit more robust than some of the flimsy plastic fenders. However, you know, these things tend to get scratched just because of where they are. So there's rocks and dirt and debris and all sorts of stuff. And they do tend to rust. So that would be something, you know, if we had a more robust plastic fender, we kind of avoid some of that rust. I think that would be pretty interesting. Same story here in the back. We do have this full fender. Good coverage though. I think it comes out quite far here in the back. And then all the way down here, mounts down next to the chainstay. So I think that works pretty well. You can see it's tapered here to give us some room for our chain there. And yeah, really not much to complain about other than the fact that they're metal, and that's, you know, personal preference. Some people love metal fenders, so I'm not necessarily preaching to the choir with that one. I'm sure there's people out there, you know, who disagree. And if you do, let me know down in the comments, you know, plastic or metal fenders. What are we going with, people? This will be our poll. We're gonna break it once and for all, okay? We're gonna decide once and for all, plastic or metal fenders. Now the rear basket it does come with is actually pretty darn huge. This is about, it's about 18 inches, I would say, and it's fairly square, probably closer to, probably 18 inches this way, probably closer to 16 inches this way, and it's about 8 inches deep. So really you could do quite a lot of carrying with this, whether that's throwing a backpack back here or, you know, a small grocery run. I think that this is a great addition here, and a lot bigger than most of the rear baskets that we see come on bikes that are, you know, about this size and this sort of use case. Now we'll notice when we do get to folding it, having some of these carrying options here, it is going to affect our footprint just a little bit. It's going to make it a little bit wider. It's not going to fold up quite as tight as it would without those, but these are the accessories that OKAI sent, so I wanted to install those to kind of show you what it could be. But just know that you are giving up, you know, a couple inches here and there to have those things installed when you go to fold it up. As far as the saddle goes, you know, just a pretty average run-of-the-mill saddle. I do like that they do give us this hand grip here in the back. I've always been a fan of these hand grips. I find for myself, when I am maneuvering the bike around, I do tend to grab the back of the saddle. So personally, I've always been a big fan of having a hand grip back there. Not the end of the world if, you know, a bike doesn't have that. I usually would just grab that. Maybe, you know, the rear rack, something like that. But I do enjoy a good handhold every once in a while. So that is just another personal little plus here for me. And again, thinking about the price point, thinking about what you're getting here, you know, from a company like OKAI. OKAI, I think they made their name really in the scooter side of the industry. They've come out with a couple of bikes. We've reviewed some of those recently. Tyson's reviewed a couple of those, and he had a lot of nice things to say about them. So me getting this one down here, I think that it makes a lot of sense for the price point. Again, kind of what you're getting. The next thing to chat about, I think, is going to be our gears. Now we do have more of a Revo Shift 7-speed shifter right here, right? So you just twist this up, easier, harder, right? Super simple. And then that's connected back here to our Shimano tourney. Now this is the lower level Shimano tourney, but in my experience, just the way that it came out of the box does get the job done pretty well. So having 7 gears here, yeah, it's better than 6. We got 7 gears here. Decently sized chain ring up here in the front. I don't think this is a 52 tooth chain ring, so it'll be interesting to see if we get any ghost pedaling. We'll go through that when we do the ride test portion. But all in all, nice to see some gears here. This is a bike I could see them going single speed on it, but I think for the use case and kind of, you know, especially if you got this stuff loaded down, you got some terrain, having some gears I think is the right decision there. Now, the last thing that we'll talk about before we go and do the ride test is going to be these tires. So we have got these 20 by 3-inch tires. Now you can inflate these to 40 PSI, which for a 3-inch tire is pretty high, in my opinion. We see a lot of those that are, you know, closer to 30. I think 30 is probably the normal one I've seen. So we probably have some extra thick sidewalls here, and we do have some knobs on here. So this is something that is, while the rest of the bike kind of screams like, leave me on the street, I think the tires can handle a little bit of off-roading, mainly because we got these knobs here on the side, which is going to give us our grip when we go off-road. So not a whole lot to complain about as far as the tires goes, other than it would be cool to see some sidewall reflective stripes for some nighttime safety. But because we don't have an integrated light in the front or the rear, this is probably not a bike I would recommend riding after dark, especially because it's black. It's a darker color. It's harder to see in the nighttime. So those would be some of those things. So I think we covered most of the specs of the bike that I think are important when making a purchasing decision. The next thing to do, I guess before we go do the ride test, let's go ahead and fold this thing up. Gotta love wireless mics. Just set up your camera, do whatever you want to do. So I'm gonna bring these down a little bit. I had those up, just kind of testing to see how high those went. Now when I fold a bike, normally I'll fold the stem first. A little bit of pressure needed to pop that down. Slide this down there. Now, this actually fits right on the shifter, which is rubberized, so that's actually kind of nice. There's no metal on metal for our suspension, so that is interesting. We'll go ahead and pop this. All of these are 2-stage levers, so they got a little safety, and you can pop it open. That goes for the stem and for folding it here. I'm gonna fold this back. Let me think about how this folds up for a second. And let's put that right about here. As you get used to folding the bike, you'll find like the right spot for you. I usually just step back for a second and kind of think about how it's gonna fold up. And then let's go ahead and put our kickstand up and then fold it up. Looks like I was bang on with where that pedal goes. Now you'll see what I had mentioned. Maybe I wasn't bang on. Ah, it's pretty close. Now you'll see what I mean about having both these baskets on here and folding it up. You can get it to be stable, and I think that's awesome, but we do lose a little bit of that, in my opinion, folding blueprint, because our baskets are gonna hit each other right here. So that's kind of as close as you can get it folded up. Might be able to finesse it a little bit, but with both of those baskets, you kind of lose out on that folding capability, in my opinion, as far as like getting a smaller blueprint. Now we take this off, Now these are extras, as we'd mentioned, so these don't come stock with the bike. But once you put those on, you are gonna lose that folding capability, so it is something to think about. Now if we just took off one of these, it looks like this would fold up pretty much the way it was intended. So if we took off this front basket, I think this would pretty much slide up next to here, and I think the tire and the rest of it would fit under where that basket is. So really, it's only when you have the rear basket and the front basket do you lose out on this. I think if you chose either one of those, whether it's the rear basket or the front basket, I think you'd be able to fold it up pretty close to normal, if not 100% all the way there. But again, just something to show you, if you do have both of these, it's not gonna fold up perfectly. Now, I'm gonna grab the keys here. I'll go ahead and remove the battery. All right, so now, make sure that's in a good spot. All right, so now let's go ahead and get this battery out. As I had mentioned, we do have our locking mechanism right here, or our key there. We pop this thing out, set this back down, and now we've got our battery. So this is the battery. It doesn't weigh too much. Again, it's only 10.4 amp hours. Really not too shabby. I'm pretty much a big fan of how this key fits in there. I don't have to put a key in through the bottom of the frame, so I think they knocked that out of the park. And the other thing is we do have a handle here. So if you do want to carry it, you got this little handle option, which makes it super easy to, carry it around, charge it, defend yourself with it, because that would hurt getting smacked with that. So also works as a self-defense weapon. So we'll go ahead and put this back in here. Kaboom. And then the next step would be to fold it up. Let's go ahead and do that. Now when I go to fold it up, I usually do the opposite way. I will do the stem first, get that locked in, and then we're gonna swing around this way, pop this open, and then lock it in. And we're good to go. So that is a lot of the specs. Let's go ahead and knock out the ride test, and I'll do some closing thoughts on the FlexMov here. All right, guys, we are out here for the ride test on the FlexMov. I'm not gonna say the whole name, I already told you that. So let's go ahead and do some test riding. Now, first off, I'm going to raise these handlebars up quite a bit. And I'm gonna do it one-handed because that is what I do when I have a camera in this hand. Now that we've got it into a little bit more of an upright riding position for me, go ahead and turn it on. There's a power button back over here. Press and hold that. Our screen's gonna come to life here. Now, fun fact, this is actually the exact same screen that comes on the new Jackrabbit OG2. Now it turns on, it's not in any mode, so you press this mode button right here. We got 1, 2, 3, and then off. So it'll just cycle through those. So let's go ahead and put it into 1 and see what we get out of the throttle here. Again, nice easy ride. This is you know, very similar to a lot of compact folding bikes, and what's interesting is the throttle is not synced to our level of pedal assist. So we've got 3 levels here, basically 4 if you're counting 0, and our throttle is still going to take us up to right around that 20-mile-an-hour mark. And she's still going. Now in the beginning we talked about this is only 350 watt motor, and it does peak fairly high for a 350 watt motor at 672 watts. And we don't have a dyno to throw that on to test that, but just based on my experience, it does feel a little bit closer to 672. And you know, it's got a decent amount of torque to it. Nothing too crazy, but we do have the mechanical advantage of those 20-inch wheels. Just makes everything feel a little bit more torquey. Now, if we go into stopping, we'll go ahead and stop here real quick. And before we do that, let me shift down. Now, something that, you know, I have noticed is this particular Revo shifter is crisp. I mean, if you can hear it, it's like, it's got some crispness to it, which I do kind of like. It kind of reminds me of the clicking of more of the rapid fire trigger shifters. And normally I'm not a huge fan of Revo shifters, but for some reason this one just, I don't know, it feels nice. So we're in pedal assist level 1. We are in gear 1. Let's go ahead and see what sort of speeds we can get out of her. Have to start shifting up. And it looks like, you know, this is cadence, so we're just kind of moving our feet basically, like this, not really pedaling too intensely. And we're getting about 12 miles an hour. Go ahead and bump that up. Pretty much jumps right up to 15. Now what's interesting is it really does have quite a bit of torque. And now we're going, I guess we're gonna get closer to our 20 miles per hour here. So I mean, it hits 20 pretty well, especially considering this is a 350 watt motor. Now the bike itself, not super heavy, coming in at about 62 pounds, I believe. And yeah, so that probably helps quite a bit in getting this thing up to speed. But yeah, really, the 0 to 20 with pedal assist is not too bad. Now, usually when you have some of these smaller bikes and you get up to top speed, you get what's, you know, most people call ghost pedaling. Basically, you're like moving your legs like a hamster on a wheel. You're just like run, 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 run. You can't keep up with how fast you're going. But I'm going 20 right here, and this feels pretty decent. Decent pedal cadence. I mean, there are some that are a lot worse. Now, if you had this thing going any faster, you know, 23, 24 miles per hour, you probably would start to do a little bit of ghost pedaling. But all in all, it feels pretty nice. Now, as far as ride feel goes, as far as, you know, just the way that I am seated on here, I'm pretty upright, as you can tell. Got the handlebars adjusted up a little bit, so that helps out quite a bit. And the seat, I think, is at a pretty good height for me. Now with that rear basket in there, it does, at least the way I installed it, does limit you a little bit as far as how low you can have your seat. If you put it super low, I think you can get away with it, but the way the angle works out, there's kind of this mid ground where it would run into the basket. So I have it, you know, high, fairly good pedal geometry. I could probably go up a little bit, and I've still got a couple of rungs. I'm at 5 out of 10 notches on the stem here, so I could raise that up quite a bit as well if I wanted to. As you can tell, we're at 5 of 10, so this would go up higher, and this is pretty darn level with my shoulders, it feels like. I mean, it's going down a little bit, but it feels pretty comfortable. Yeah, I mean, all in all, it rides kind of exactly how you'd expect it to ride, except the thing I was surprised about was we're not getting any ghost pedaling, which I kind of predicted we would, and the torquiness here is just a little bit unexpected. So again, we're in pedal assist level 3 here, which is our highest level of pedal assist, and we just start cruising, and it gets up to 20 miles per hour pretty quick. So that part I am definitely impressed by. The torque and the ability and how quick it gets up to top speed. I think on OKAI's website they say up to 20 miles per hour in no time at all. which, you know, just sounds like marketing, but it kind of feels like you are up to 20 miles per hour in no time at all. You know, it's definitely not a Sur-Ron or something that is, you know, more torquey, like a, you know, a Scoria or a Bixter Sport, something like that. But those are different bikes. They've got 750 watt motors in them, but this thing feels surprisingly torquey. Now, if you put it down into pedal assist level 1, it still has, you know, enough torque to feel like you're out there and you're getting a little bit of sportiness out of it, but it's nothing too crazy where it feels like, you know, it's going to run away from you. Now, because this is cadence, there's usually a delay when you start pedaling and when you stop pedaling. So let's go ahead and test the stop pedaling delay here. So I'm going to be pedaling and I'm going to stop and it's off. Let's see, I'm trying to do it like a little bit quicker. So it's on, stop, stop. So it is pretty quick. It doesn't feel like it's too long to where it feels like the bike's getting away from you. And then when it comes on, let's go ahead and test that as well. Let's see, I want to try to do that the best way. So start, on. Yeah, that seems like it's timed pretty right as well. So as far as the ride experience, I think they really dialed a couple things. Somehow they got a good Revo shifter that I like, and they've got the torquiness there, and I feel like they really got the cadence timing dialed in pretty nice. So, I mean, really, ride quality wise, can't really ask for much more at this price point, in my opinion. And guys, I think that is going to do it for our review on the FlexMov EBF10. It's the end of the video, so I got to say the whole thing, you know, just kind of round it out. And honestly, it's not too bad. So if you guys want to pick one of these up, we'll have a link down to their website below. And if any of you have these already, they are kind of new, but I'm sure there are some people that have gotten their hands on it and probably, you know, looking at reviews, seeing what other people think about it. Would love to know your experience down below. So leave us a comment down in, you know, the comment section where comments go. Thanks for riding with us, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.